All right, our next question. In your experience, what are the best and worst things someone can do during an interview for medical school or residency acceptance? And are there any automatic disqualifiers? Dr. Moin, do you like to start?
All right. So the best and the worst things. I think the best thing will be like um, that you present your basically the best behavior you have, during the time of interview, and be confident, right dressing, eye to eye contact. So those are the things basically needed kind of during the interview. The worst thing basically, what I think that if I hear something from a medical student, uh, or in a residency interview, that they, for example, if that person is telling me that, yeah, she want to become, a pediatrician, but there is no like backup experience that I can see that he was interested in past. So this seems like that just yesterday she thought that she can be a pediatrician, but there is nothing like in her past experience. And that is, I think, a pretty negative thing. So you have to prepare yourself for in the medical college and back yourself up, basically. Otherwise, I think, you're not going to impress the interviewer.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dr. Qureshi, would you like to add to that?
I'm not sure you want me to add to that. Okay, Danielle said something very apt, which is be genuine, right? Number one, weave a story. If you can't weave a story, practice weaving a story before you get to your interview, okay? If there are glaring holes in your CV or problems, address them early, because during the interview process, somebody will ask you, hey, Faisal, is there anything else you want to talk about? Do you have any questions? And then you can say, let me tell you about this thing you may have seen on my CV. That now there is a gamble there, right? That maybe they didn't pick up on it, but at some point in time, somebody will pick up on it. Please, please, please read about the place that you're going to go interview, right? Don't just show up and not know anything about it. And when I say read, look at their webpage. Don't just look at the group that you've created with other students who are interviewing for the same process. Spend a little time reviewing something. You will get a lot of points if you say, hey, Dr. Qureshi, I read your paper on XYZ. Tell me more about it. But be genuine. If you don't really care, don't ask that question, right? I would tell you, make yourself a little bit more interesting. What do I mean by that? All of you guys have something that you love to do. Some people like to read. Some people like to read music or listen to music. Whatever that is, be ready to talk about it. Bring that to the table. Oh my God, I'm such a movie buff. That's fine. In the year 2021, that's not a disqualifier. Have you seen this XYZ, Zack Snyder's Justice League, 4 hours? That makes you interesting, okay? What don't you want to do? All right, and for both genders, don't wear clothes or makeup that is over the top. You want to be pseudo-conservative, right? If you walk in, for the guys, if you walk in with a bright tie that has got patterns on it, it's going to be hard for me to make eye contact with you. Definitely don't yawn, please, okay? Your first interview of the day should be the same as your last interview for the day. Your days are going to be long when you're interviewing. So you have to, between your interviews, as you go from office to office, just do an emotional and mental reset. Okay, I just messed Qureshi. I don't want to talk about this again. But guess what? You do have to talk about it. Because there'll be candidates, when we rank candidates, I will say, oh my God, I had such a great interview. And somebody in my group will say, oh my God, that was the most boring person on the planet. Obviously, there's something in the middle, right? So you want to be interesting. You don't want to be over the top. You want to be sitting up straight and be interested in the person you're having a conversation with. That is it. That's the only shot you get in trying to impress the person opposite you as to why they should pick you, right? They have a lot more candidates. It's a buyer's market, not a seller's market generally. So be prepared to sell yourself as best as you can possibly do. Oh, are there any automatic disqualifiers? Absolutely. Again, please don't talk to me about I love to drink wine. I'm serious. That there are some things that are not good. Don't tell me about some diversity, equity, inclusion issues that you've had in the past. Or if you've had them and you've made it up to see me, you have to be able to explain it and talk about it with me, right? Those things. There was one kid who started talking to me about, when I asked him, tell me something interesting about your life. Oh, the time I got arrested. I'm like, whoa, please don't talk to me about the time you got arrested because you were drinking and you got into a car crash. Now, if that's on your record because you have to disclose it, then you have to talk about it so that it's not a bad, you bring it up, you disclose it, you have a conversation. Hey, you may have seen in my record that I was, DUI, whatever. I stopped drinking 6 years ago. I need you to know that. Okay, so face those issues head on. No real. By the time you get into somebody's office for an interview, the major disqualifiers have been removed. So you don't usually get into the door without, unless if you're being interviewed, you're in the process of running for that spot. So I want you guys to think about that. If you're being interviewed, you've got a shot, make the best of it.
All right.
A couple little pieces of advice that I remember I had gotten. One, your interview starts from the time that you start traveling for your interview. So, anything happening at the airport or the taxi ride to the airport, you get to the hotel, you don't know who else you're going to encounter during that travel process. It may be one of the residency coordinators or program directors that you didn't research, or another interviewee. If you act improperly or misbehaved with somebody at the hotel and somebody else listens in, that can always get carried through to the admissions. So if you're a good person, you shouldn't have to worry about that, but always be mindful that your interview starts as soon as you start traveling for that interview. The other thing, as you're preparing for the interview and you're doing your research, make sure that you have prepared a good, solid, concise elevator pitch. So, because most interviews that I've been in start out with, tell me a little bit about yourself. And if you don't have a good elevator pitch and you start going off into tangents, or you start talking about things that are not relevant in that first introduction, remember, first impressions matter. So you want to have a good elevator pitch about yourself when they ask you, tell me about yourself. And then during the course of the interview, have little tidbits that you want to, present to the interviewee and kind of lead them into the direction that you want it. That's just good interviewing skills. If you want them to talk about your research and they haven't asked you about your research question, try to mention that in one of the other answers so they can have a follow-up question and ask about your research or your experience volunteering, things like that. So that's good life and interviewing skills also, but it definitely applies for medical school and residency interviews.
Yumna, I need to talk about two things that are a little sensitive about the interview. One is alcohol, and the other one is religion and Islam and hijab and stuff like that, because we're all from Pakistan. It's quite all right that if you are being invited to a pre-interview cocktail hour, absolutely go. Don't say, hey, I don't go to bars, okay? That's gonna mess your chances up. Just show up, and when they offer you a drink, say, no, thank you. You don't need to give them an explanation about anything. You just say, no, thank you, I'm gonna have an orange juice and move on. There was recently in our interview process, there was a young woman who showed up and her letter said she doesn't shake hands because she's Muslim. Okay, and that became an entire 30-minute conversation in my post-interview thing. It was a complete disaster. Okay, and you have to respect what you can and cannot do, what you do and do not want to do. Just make sure that you have to know that that can come up in a conversation that you don't even know about is happening, right? Because one of the letter writers said, so and so does not shake hands with men. And that's what we spent time talking about. It wasn't a disqualifier, but I could tell that it made people uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. And I'm sure that that affected the way people graded that particular woman.
All right, wow, that is interesting. Thank you for that. Dr. Jamshed, you had some comments that would you mind elaborating on?
Yeah, nothing more than what I put. I think everybody's added. I can only reinforce what they've said. Just like Dr. Qureshi said, don't bring any negativity. We had some post-match interviews for our fellowship, and you could tell which candidate was interested, had done their homework, and those who had not. You have one candidate who's making time during rounds and looks tired and knows nothing about the program but wants to apply for a position, versus another one who's sitting down and is smiling and asking questions and knows what everyone has done. So and for us, the disqualifiers would be any of the racism, sexism kind of topics, which in general would not come up, but sometimes they do. And if they do, that would be a red flag.
Mm-hmm. All right.